All right, guys, this is Pursuing the Heart. We got another great episode tonight, Tim. What do you think?
Oh, another one for sure.
Another one.
The Lord's here today.
Man, we're just knocking these things off and one at another, and they're just rolling. I think we're up to like 16, 17 something episodes now.
Are we really?
Yeah, and we're about to finish our first season.
Season 1's completing.
Season 1 is completing, and we got Clint in our cleanup spot here tonight. Hey, what's up, Clint?
You're gonna end, with the Titanic going down.
Going down.
That's right.
So this is Clint Wetherill. Clint Wetherill, people. Good friend of Tim and I's.
Mm-hmm.
It's really good to be here. I love you both very much, and anytime I can, sit across from you, whether it's a meal of food or on your podcast tonight, that is a huge blessing to me. So thanks for having me on.
We appreciate you.
Yeah, we're blessed to have you.
How do you know Clint, Tim?
Man, there's a quick answer and a long answer, and I'll give you the middle answer.
Okay.
So, great banquet.
Ooh.
Okay. Honestly, it was in the hardest point of my life, and the first time I ever met Clint, I was actually crying on his shoulder.
Oh. Was that true, Tim? Is that true, Clint?
That is true.
Oh, man.
And God used him and his wife to come around me. I didn't even know who they were.
His wife is pretty strong.
Man, they completely just picked me up. They were the hands and feet for me and at that time, and have been just in my life since then, and in moments, and just been encouragement since then. But yeah, that was the first time I met Clint. I cried on his shoulder, legitimately.
Well, you both know that I'm a big crier, so I didn't know I was going to start crying.
Well, I didn't know that.
I'm already there. Thanks, man.
So I've never heard a story where someone else is crying on your shoulder. You're usually crying.
It's like anytime I'm involved in anything ministry related, which thank the good Lord is relatively often.
Uh-huh.
I always come away with the other people I participate in that ministry with saying, "Man, that Clint sure cries a lot." And I'm okay with that. I think I went, the first 14, 15 years of my adult life, never crying one time. And I got a relationship with Jesus, and I cry every day. So I'm cool with that.
Yeah, I'm cool with that too. I mean, I cry every once in a while, watching a movie most of the time, So.
What movies are you watching crying to?
Dude, there's some sad
The
parts.
Matrix?
No, you don't cry in them. Well, Matrix 3, when Neo dies, and it's supposed to be like similar to Christ, he gives up his body and for the greater good. Right. And so you kind of, it's like a sad moment because Neo's sacrificing himself. So anyway.
I just cried at Toy Story 2 last week. Toy Story 2.
Dude,
when
some
they
of those
got separated?
Yeah.
No, it was when Jessie was talking about her past owner, Emily, and how Emily kind of left her.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah, I can see that.
Song. There's a song that comes on. It says, "When you used to love me."
Oh,
I'm like, that was it. That was it.
Broke
for
you
me.
down.
That was it. Toy Story 2.
Some of these kids movies I can't watch anymore because they're like, oh my gosh, man! What's in the air right now?
I know.
We need to move on from the kids' stories.
Salty discharge coming out of my eyes.
So, all right. So we're pursuing the heart. God pursued us. And now we're pursuing Him, and we every week just come on here. We can show how you can have casual conversations about Scripture, and you might have a disagreement. We might have a disagreement here on air, and then how you understand someone's point of view, and then you acknowledge it. And we also have every week someone come on and give a personal story, how they know how they loved Christ. And I can't get my words out right there. But anyway, Clint's coming on tonight, and it'll be a good one. And so I'm going to open up in prayer. Tim, you got it?
Yeah, for sure. Father, thank you for tears and laughter, just every moment that we can just be walking with you, and you just allow just the emotion of who you've made us just flow out for others to enjoy the fruit. We're just grateful for Clint and him coming on to say whatever you are going to lead him to say tonight. We thank you for the scriptures in front of us that are encouragement to us and help just feed our spirit. Lord, more importantly, we pray for those who are choosing to listen to this, whenever they are, that you are continuously pursuing their heart, and they know that you are their guide and you are the head of their life. So again, we thank you for your word. Thank you for your son. You give the grace. Heaven, I pray. Amen.
All right. So last time we had Mindy Campbell come on, and
she floored me, dude.
I think she wrecked you.
It was a rough day, man, and like she came on, and it was intentional that others said no, she said yes, and I needed her. The Lord knew it. I needed her in that day.
She has some very good spiritual wisdom.
Yeah,
and it was really good to hear.
Yeah, I agree.
So we talked about wives, husbands, children, fathers, their different roles. And there's some difficult things in there, or it can be difficult, but I think sometimes, over time, we've heard in the past those, sermons or teachings where it can be, difficult, or, you can read into it, differently. And, but if you break down the word and you kind of just sit there and you listen to other scripture, and we showed that last week on how different scripture speaks to how you're supposed to actually, God, then you had Christ submitting to the Father, and then we submit to Christ, and why wouldn't we submit to each other? Right, Tim? Is that what we talked about?
Yeah, you're dead on with that.
Okay. And so we kind of left off in like 24 last week, but to go into 25, you have to talk about 24 first, 23 and 24, I believe.
Yeah, don't leave out Mindy's favorite verse. 23.
Yeah, we got to go over her favorite verse, yeah. So jumping into Colossians 3, 23, it says, whatever you do your work heartily as for the Lord rather than for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the reward of the inheritance. It is the Lord Christ whom you serve. So we kind of talked about that last week, and she really laid 23 down.
Yeah.
Tim, what were some takeaways on that 23?
Yeah. That piece there, she used the analogy of being in the home and doing what she called the mundane task of motherhood, and being the caretaker of her home, and doing it at first was for her children and for her husband. And then she had this moment where it flipped, where, this is what the Lord provided me with. This is what he's given me. I'm going to serve the Lord in my home. And that's what I'm going to do. And this is exactly right here in 23, where we're reminded that, so many times it's said, this is simply put, don't seek the approval, don't seek the recognition of men, others in this world. Do it for the Lord, because everything that you have, everything that's in your life is from the Lord, and he deserves all praise, all glory. And he's the one who has she said, the inheritance. He is Jesus. So that it was really just trying to keep the focus away from the world and put it back on Christ.
And Clint, in the sales game, I'm in the sales game. I think you have been for a while. Mm-hmm. It's hard. That's something probably in the past. I know that I would just not. I would look at this verse totally different. I was working it for myself, not for Christ, not for the Lord.
It's a difficult balance. And I was thinking of two things. I was, thinking, you can't serve two masters. Mm-hmm. And, I know at points in my life, I was self-proclaimed believer, but, I was more driven by materialistic things than I was, the Lord, and here it says, as working for the Lord, not for human masters. I had a time where I was really bad at that. And, but anyhow, number two, and something that I know the three of us whenever we serve in the ministry that we've been in, the Great Banquet, where we talk about priorities a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And especially like with my job, and really my life, how quickly I can get my priorities, out of whack.
Yep.
That you're not doing, working it with all your heart, whatever that may be. You make it a materialistic thing. You're working for money. And it's funny, we're in this ministry called the Great Banquet. And one of the big things that I just served on my 10th Great Banquet team. And, we talk about priorities a lot. And every single time I go and I participate in the Great Banquet, I day one, I'm always like, my gosh, here I am again with my priorities, out of whack. Like, this is the 10th time I've heard this. Like, get it through this thick head of mine.
Yeah.
But, I think it's getting into scripture like this and keeping it in front of us, because we're all very broken people. And we all need Jesus. Mm-hmm. And it's things like this podcast. It's things like the Great Banquet. It's things that help, maintain our priorities and put them into whack. But yes, in my world of business, it's a very thankless world, and it's real easy to get your priorities out of whack. And if I don't, put Christ at the center of what I do, then I'm going backwards pretty quick.
Right. Well said. So in 24, it says, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the reward of the inheritance. It is the Lord Christ whom you serve. Did we talk about this on the podcast with Mindy, Tim?
Yeah.
Is this like an earthly reward, or is this a spiritual reward?
Well, as Mindy put so well, Jesus. It was just Jesus.
It was just Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, you can look at this as she put it like, if I can give you something tangible here that you can experience your inheritance now, you look at the fruit that he produces from you and your kids,
mm-hmm.
your husband, and in her case, wives for our cases. But you look at, if you are walking your identity, spirit first, and producing fruit, you can experience the joys of the life he's given you. You can live in rest, already have your salvation sealed, and you still have something else coming for you after this life. Because, I've said a couple of times, we're aliens here. This is not our home. We have a home. We have a salvation hidden in him, and it's hidden with Jesus.
So, okay. So piggybacking on that and piggybacking on what Clint was talking about, if my priorities are out of whack, I'm just doing my own thing. Is there a reward there? If I'm chasing my own self, chasing my own desires, is there a reward there? It's kind of not fulfilling, right?
Well, if you're walking in the flesh,
yeah,
and your priorities are out of whack, like you said, it's always gonna lead to chaos. It may not come right away.
Yeah.
You may see earthly. I guess I'll use the rewards here, but if you like sales, we're all in sales here. You may get the recognition, you may get the high achiever award or the sales bonus. It may feel good,
mm-hmm.
but then it's leave you so empty, because then you did it. Okay, what do you do for me now?
I had a goal, and my goal was like an income goal.
Yeah,
and so it took me years to get there. I hit it 4 or 5 years ago. And a friend of mine looked at me and goes, okay, now what are you going to do? And I'm like, it didn't really do anything for me.
Oh.
I think as men, at least for me, I shouldn't put words in other men's mouths, but the grass is always greener on the other side whenever I'm chasing, earthly things.
Yeah.
Like you said about your sales goal.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you got there. Oh, okay. Now what?
Yeah.
Back in my formal life, whenever I was doing stuff that I wasn't supposed to be doing, dating certain women. I was a single guy, for a while,
mm-hmm.
and like, the things that the world thinks, like Charlie Sheen on 2.5 Men,
right?
And you live a chaotic world like that, and there's actually zero fulfillment
Yeah.
in that the grass is always greener on the other side. And, for me, I lived in all these different phases of my life. The only time, I am fulfilled is whenever I'm in the Word.
Yeah.
And I'm pointing myself and my family to Jesus. So, I don't know if you guys struggle with that, but like for me, gosh, my mind goes to these places.
Yeah.
And it always goes back to like, why am I chasing this thing where the grass is always greener on the
Sure.
other side?
So on the flip side of that, Clint, we can think about when we are pursuing Him, the fulfillment out of doing things for Him is longer lasting. It's very fulfilling. And that's why a lot of the guests that come on here have all been a part of the banquet community or been through the banquet. Highly encourage it if you ever get invited, any of those. But also too, like in my personal life, I stepped out of my box and was willing to be used. And now, because I was willing to pursue Him and be willing to use, I can see the guy on the left of me. And I've encouraged him. I've impacted him, and he can say that, Tim. And it's been very fulfilling for me to see, and very encouraging. It's more encouraging to me, and it probably is very encouraging to him. And also to walking alongside my friend Clint and others encourages me. And it's be willing to get out of your box and live for Christ and do things and put Him first, besides put your own desires and pursuing things that aren't fulfilling. Because you can look back in a lifetime, and again, I'm not patting myself on the back or anything, but you can look in a lifetime over the last 20 years or so, and you can say, man, okay, God used me here. Man, what could He have done if I had focused more on that than some other things, right? But the reward is seeing that, and the reward is, I mean, it's you can't put a dollar amount on that. It's everlasting.
Yeah. What you just said there, it does kind of play into like the last verse in 3. Mind if I read it real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
For the wrongdoer will be paid back for the wrong he has done, and there is no partiality or favoritism. God knew the desire of your heart at the time, we first met. And, as an example, you've been very transparent about that example. It's been, Lord, use me if it's just for one. And that was a desire of your heart. He didn't do these things for your fulfillment. He did, He desires for you to have all desires of your heart. Mm-hmm. But just because you're following Him, running after Him, doesn't mean you're going to always get those things. Nope. That's the partiality here. So just because you're running doesn't mean you get this. Also, just because you're not the wrongdoer, just because you're not doing this thing doesn't mean like you're outside. You can't come to Him either. Like you have just as much opportunity to come to Him and receive blessings, His blessings, not earthly blessings, as someone who follows Him. But like this piece right here, the wrongdoer. So all this is saying to me, at least, it's you live in the world, you do earthly things, you're going to receive earthly rewards on fulfillment. Mm-hmm. You said, it's okay. You got that now, or you're going to just live in chaos. Like
yeah, I'm glad you said this, because when I read this verse, you can read this and say, oh, well, when I do wrong, God's going to get, and that's not, I think it's, so I really like what you said, and this is where I was going. This is earthly. So if I'm doing earthly, if I'm living in my flesh, right, and not in the spirit, and I'm doing, let's just throw this example. My friend Brandon likes to say this, right? If I go down to the Speedway gas station down here and I go steal some stuff, there might be some earthly consequences for that, right?
For sure.
For sure. That's what that's saying. But I mean, there's earthly consequences for doing things that you know that you're not supposed to be doing.
Yeah. You alluded to that earlier.
Yeah.
Clint.
Clint even said that earlier.
Yeah. And, I'll talk about it a little bit later, but like, I've been down, many different seasons, and I don't know. I know the Lord has a plan, and I look back at, whenever I was chasing the wrong things and doing, earthly things. There were times that the Lord dealt with me with, for that, but it was leading me to a certain outcome,
Yeah.
So, it stinks. This world, has its priorities so messed up, and the things that people think are cool, are things that, I think the three of us have lived through, and they're so, unfulfilling. It's, I talked about it, during my testimony before, like where I remember looking at myself in the mirror during some of those times and not even knowing what I was looking back at.
Right.
But like being in community with other believers and getting in the Word, is so important, because you're talking about Mindy Campbell. I know Mindy, very well, and her brother, is probably the reason why I'm still married to my wife.
Okay.
So you talk about it, being a small world. Her brother came alongside of me whenever I was in one of those gutters. Gutter like you talked about, Tim, and, you were struggling. I was that same person, crying, in a corner of a room, like not being able to sleep, eat, I think we've all been there.
Yep.
It's a crappy place to be.
Not a good place.
If you don't have good, strong network of believers and the ability to get into the Word, like, my gosh, I don't know how people get through those times.
Yeah, you're not meant to walk this life alone.
No.
It took me it didn't. I like being around people. It's the right people, and the ones that are going to encourage you and walk along with you.
Right.
Not the ones who are just hangout people and they're really not your friends.
Right.
Yeah.
We probably all know those people in the past, but it's more fulfilling when you have true, genuine friends that will walk along with you, and no matter what. So, moving along, and starting in chapter 4, it says, "Masters, grant to your slaves justice, fairness, knowing that you too have a master in heaven." So, we've alluded this to, back in that time, you had masters and you had slaves. People had slaves. It was commonplace. If you want to take the next comparison, like I did the last podcast, if you happen to be a manager or a boss or an owner of a company and you have employees, you can see this in that verse. And to me, you don't see masters and slaves. You don't have slaves in today's world. You might in some countries, but in the United States where we live, it's not really something that, we do. So the comparison would be, if you manage people, you need to manage them in justice and fairness. Or if you own a company, and how you treat your employees and fairness and justice there, knowing that you too have a master in heaven. So how he treats you, you should be able to treat your employees the same way. I think, Clint, you own a company.
I do.
And is that basically what it's saying there?
It is, and it's it can be a tough balance, in the workforce, because you have to get it, a certain goal, and being in sales, and it can be kind of cutthroat. And I'm also, a big part of my job is real estate development, and there's a lot of politics involved. And
Sure.
I tell you what, you get involved, down those rabbit holes, and you don't see a lot of Christ, in certain instances. But I don't know, like, I am at work 40 to 50 hours a week. Where can I make the biggest kingdom impact? All right. Cause of an evening, I've got 6 and 9-year-old daughters. I go home and, we're making dinner, and we're watching Dancing with the Stars. I'm missing Dancing with the Stars, by the way, tonight.
I'm sorry about that.
No,
Clint.
they're gone too. We're taping it for tomorrow.
Okay, all right.
But anyhow, I've got the biggest part of my week where I can make the biggest kingdom impact while I'm at work.
Mm.
And I think we've heard this before. Like, I may be the only Bible that somebody sees.
Mm. Yeah.
So, if I'm talking about how I'm walking, as a Christian, and then I'm at work cussing somebody out on the phone, or I'm treating an employee bad, that's a bad representation of, me as a Christian. So, for me, I actually started a Bible study at my office.
Oh, that's awesome.
We meet every Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
We have lunch together, and we normally will pick a study guide, and we get in the Word. And I got about 80% participation with my employees, and I have people that were completely unchurched. And I actually had a couple of those people went to this last great banquet.
Oh, nice!
I sponsored 3 people. So.
Sweet.
So anyhow, I don't know if you're going to be a Christian, you can't just dip your toe in the shallow end. You've got to wear it, not just with your family and at church on Sundays. You got to take it to the streets and into your office too.
Tim, you have you're a manager now, and you have some employees under you. Is that how you read this verse too?
Yeah, I've been fortunate to be in leadership positions. Most of my professional career, and I will say there's 2 sides of those lives. There was one side where I was somebody when I wasn't at work, and I was somebody else when I was at work. And the person that I was at work, it didn't match, and it wasn't who I knew I wanted to be. I felt uncomfortable. I felt I couldn't live Jesus out because I had to be a certain way. I've been blessed to have the same exact position at a competitor now. And before I even took the job, I made sure that my manager and her manager knew that I'm chasing after Jesus. I'm a praying man. And if I'm in this role, Jesus is going to be part of this role. And, it was, some people told me I was a risk. I'm like, that's fine. Christ went to the cross for me. I'm pretty sure I can talk to him in an interview. It's going to be all right. And I have an opportunity now to talk to 9 individuals about the Lord weekly. And I can say I know 1, 2 of them. I say 2 know the Lord. Other 7, I don't know where they're at. But as you said, I might be the only person that they see as as someone who loves the Lord. And there's so much going on in the world right now that everyone says, "Oh, I'm a Christian. Raise my hand." But then they act a different way at work, and they go through all the worldly things that you would see out of a boss, and do all the worldly things that the corporate America would ask of you. Mm-hmm. And it's just not who I desire to be. And if ever asked to step away because of my faith of Christ, I'll gladly step away because He's way more important to me than being that way. But this piece here, as you mentioned, it's about culturally. There's a hierarchy of masters and slaves, and it has a bad connotation now. But, as a master, you have a responsibility that these bond servants, these slaves that come back to you, you are asked to take care of all their needs, whether they be a physical need of, home, food, clothing, warmth, all those things. And they looked for you out of love. So it's no different than our Master, our Father in heaven, as we look to Him, and He takes care of all of our needs.
Yeah, and thanks, Clint and Tim, to sharing those perspectives. It was 2 different perspectives, probably pretty close to the same. I think Paul was very intentional because we just went through 18 was in the previous chapter, wives, 19 husband, children, 20. Fathers 21, slaves in 22, and I think that one continued probably till the end of the chapter. And then right into 4, it went into masters, but then listen to 2. And I think he sums it up this way, because everyone is in one of those roles, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Where each one of us are in one of those roles. If you're a young person, you could be a child. If you're an older person, you could be an employee, or, I know it says slaves, but it's just me. All right. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And then if you have kids, you're a father, right? And if you're in a marriage, you could be a husband or a wife. But then in verse 2 of chapter 4, it's great. It says, devote yourselves to prayer, keeping alert in it with an attitude of thanksgiving. So would you guys say that's very intentional? I think it's very intentional. He put that right there. Because if you're not praying, you could get caught up in your stinking thinking. And if you're in one of those different roles, and you could be doing quite the opposite of any of those.
It calls us into a relationship with him, right? We've been given this gift in the Holy Spirit, and, it's amazing even, for me, and I've been down this path with you guys and many other people, how quickly I can, forget that we've been given, this gift of the Holy Spirit, that any time that we're scared or anxious or upset or, any loss or pain, that, we have, our Lord and Savior that we can turn to. Mm-hmm. And, you hear the cliches within the family, a family that prays together stays together, and, right. All of these things. It's so true. Mm-hmm. You look over the course of my marriage, and me and my wife have went through periods where we have not been praying together. Mm. And generally those are periods where you can see a direct correlation that we're not getting along as good, mm-hmm. And, mm-hmm. But whenever we're, on our knees and praying together, it's a totally different world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is right here, the word thanksgiving or gratitude. I think it's about the condition of your heart. If you, in all things, especially prayer, if you're going to him, like I said, pray without ceasing. Mm-hmm. It's talked about quite a bit. If you're going to him with gratitude, that's any action, any title, anything you do in your life is going to be done with thinking of him first and walking Spirit led. Because what else do you have? There's a song that I absolutely love. It's by Gable Price and Friends. It's a Christian rock band. And
what was the band?
Gable Price and Friends. And they have this song, and it talks about what about the Thanksgiving. And I think Brandon even talks about it. What more can I have for a king? But the gratitude piece is hit on so hard that there's nothing else. There's nothing he wants from us, mm-hmm. and there's nothing we could give him. But in our actions, can we submit to him and wear the godly clothing of submission and take into prayer and let him do life for us? Can we be in prayer, as you said, Clint, in relationship? That's the only way to have a relationship is communication, and communication with the Lord is through prayer.
Right.
Yeah, it says keep an alert and with an attitude of thanksgiving. If you're in a position of thankfulness, that's what you're seeing is I'm thankful for everything. I don't deserve what I have, but Christ has provided everything I have. Yeah. I know in my life I've had nothing and then whatever,
abundance,
yeah. Whatever it is, whatever it looks like. And my wife and I are very thankful for the positions we're in. So in verse 3, it says, praying at the same time for us as well, that God will open up to us a door for the word, so that we may speak forth the mystery of Christ, for which I have also been imprisoned. So this is more a perspective of Paul.
Yeah. And Timothy.
And Timothy.
The us there.
Yeah, the us part. That they would a door would be opened for the word, because they're out spreading the word. They're out going to different places to speak about the mystery. And what is the mystery?
Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ, right? It was hidden forever. That Jesus Christ was going to come and humble himself as a man, as a human, and was going to be crucified on the cross, buried, rise again, and then was going to ascend back into heaven. That was the mystery.
And that's for everybody, Jews and Gentiles, right?
It's for everyone. That's what we read in the previous chapter there, Tim.
Yeah.
There is no distinction.
That's what made the Pharisees, the Sadducees so upset, was when they would mention the Gentiles, they would tune Paul out, and that's why they're trying to shut him up and put him in prisons, as he says here.
Right.
You know, if we want to shut you up, we can't control your mouth, but we can put you physically in prison, even though you say you're, free now, but let's put you here.
I don't think I even realized that he was referring to being in physical prison.
That's where they were. So
I think back on that.
That's okay.
I've read this several times.
That's
and
all right.
Oh my gosh! Of course, he's been imprisoned.
Yeah.
For this, and that's what he's referring to.
He's writing his whole letter from prison.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, that just goes to show you. I've read the Bible front to back like 4 or 5 times.
Oh yeah,
and you miss so much.
Yeah. My wife, she Friday afternoon, she's like, Friday, it was around lunch. She said, "You got to listen to this video. We need to talk about it." I'm like, okay, well, I'll listen to the video. The guy's teaching on something. So it's like, she's all excited for me to listen to it so she can talk to me about it. And she's like, "I've went to church all my life. I've never heard this." And I'm like, okay, all right. Can you explain it to me? You're just like, oh, okay, it's right there. So, yeah. So she was like all excited now. She's like, "Oh, I've never seen that. I like that. I've never heard that before." And we were even talking about it today. So it's just it's really awesome. So,
yeah. Sometimes you're reading a verse or a couple verses back to back.
Yeah.
You really get caught up in a really good moment that you're just getting hit in the face with, or something's really just resonant with you. And you kind of finish the verses up, but you get back to that piece that was kind of pulling you. And then you read back and, you remember that thing, but then you get something else. So we talk about this a couple times on this podcast that, you could read something, front to back Bible, or 10 times, and you get something different every single time. And it just depends where you're at in your walk, in your life, what's going on in your day,
right? That
you're just getting hit with it in a different way. But the word's not changed. It's a living word.
So he after in prison, is that a semicolon, Clint? I know you went to IU. Is that a semicolon?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm in the NIV.
Oh, okay.
I don't have a semicolon, but I will say that.
So you have a period?
My IU education did teach me what a semicolon was. Believe it or not.
So in your version, Tim, is that a semicolon at the end of verse 3?
I have an extended hyphen.
Okay, extended. Is that extended hyphen?
Pretty much it's
same thing. So it's not a period. So he's continuing his same thought.
It's a dependent
Which
clause.
version are you? Which version are you guys?
New American Standard.
So the semicolon and the colon and the extended hyphen signifies there's a dependent clause that is.
He's continuing the same thought.
Yes, it's contingent on the first thought.
So in verse 4, when we go to verse 4, it says that I may make it clear in the way I ought to speak. So if you go into the previous verse that we just talked about, what he's saying in my mind, the way it says may make it clear in the way I ought to speak about the mystery. That's what I'm thinking that he's referring to there. Is that, I know you like to differ with me, Tim. Is that what you're getting?
Yeah. You go back to what's going on here, and Paul's making sure that it's understood that the mystery of Christ is not just for the Jews; it's for everybody, especially the Gentiles. So he's making it very clear that this message, everything that he set up to this point, in every chapter in Colossians, that, listen, I'm being clear on this. This whole letter is not designated just for one group of people. Everything in here is not set apart just for one audience. It's for everybody to understand.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just going on to make sure that he's clear on that.
All right, so moving into verse 5, it says, "Conduct yourselves with wisdom toward outsiders, making the most of the opportunity." And Clint, your example of what you do at your work, I just want to sit here for a second. So you are conducting your wisdom with your employees. You have a Bible study, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those are outsiders because they're outside. Some of those have never been in a faith environment or probably have never heard Christ. And you're speaking wisdom to them, spiritual wisdom, and you're making the most of that opportunity.
Let me also say that I fail a lot.
Well, that's fine.
I
You're
fail
good.
a lot.
You're good.
But yeah, I think,
Hey, as this podcast has gone, people can listen to this, and Tim has told me that I'm wrong a lot, so I'm okay with that.
well, I'm in a house full of estrogen, so I get told I'm wrong, every other minute when I'm at home. But
so you have a lot of Tims around you. Then.
Yeah,
What does that mean?
Yeah,
Estrogen. Okay.
but no,
People tell them
you do see, it when you wear your faith on your sleeve, like in the workplace, like that, you do see, transformation. For example, we got a guy, Bryce, that he works for me, but like he's somewhere between a little brother and a friend, and he never knew the Lord at all, completely unchurched, and he runs the Bible study.
Oh wow.
That's awesome.
Every
Transformation.
week. Yeah, it's just you never know, what seeds, And I remember whenever I was scared to start that Bible study, my buddy Rick that I was talking about earlier, I was in a Bible study with him for 13 years, and I kept saying, I want to start this Bible study at work, and he kept listening to this every week. I talk about this, and then. 1 week he said, "You need to stop being such a wuss and go home tonight and send out an email to your employees,
right,
and ask them to join this Bible study." He didn't say wuss, by the way. There's another word I'm gonna leave out. But he was right.
Right.
It's kind of like the Nike slogan, "Just do it." I mean, you just we got to be bold.
Sometimes it's hard to do that.
It is, and I've seen that a lot. And. Sometimes with the relationships and friendships that I had from my former life, trying to tell people that, it's not really who I am anymore.
Yeah.
Those people don't like to hear that, but you got to be bold.
Right. So in the very next verse, it says, "Let your speech always be with grace, as though seasoned with salt, so that you will know how you should respond to each person." Tim, what does that look like, man?
Yeah, I take a lot from this verse, actually. And it's one of those things, Clint, you said, you read it and you're like, oh, I didn't get that. I don't understand what that meant, or I never read that. And I took a lot from this verse recently, because to me, it's about not burning bridges. There's so much division in the world and in our life that it's easy to burn a bridge just by saying one phrase or one allegiance to something, and it's not what it's about. Even when you mentioned, Clint, those friends you had, in a previous life, it's really easy to walk away from them. It's really easy to say, this is who I am, and almost they probably feel like, oh, they're a little like pushed off or condemned for what they're choosing to do. But where the hard thing could be is showing them grace through that, and being able to be like, well, hey man, like if you want to do that, that's your deal. Mm-hmm. It's fine. Not my deal. It's not what I choose to do anymore. I choose Jesus. That's what Christ did. I mean, he he still was around all those goobers and people that were just making poor choices. But what happened? There was transformation here.
Right.
And that's why I'm imploring you, like, if you have people who you differ with and you're just different, don't burn that bridge. You know, it's there for a reason. So allow it still to be crossed over, because we said earlier, you may be the only person that leads them, that they talk about Christ with them, the only Bible they read. So don't shut them out. That's what I get from that.
Yeah, I get that. Clint was saying that perfectly. You know, you might be the only person that they see Jesus through is you. You know, that's it. So just be cautious on the way you talk, the way you conduct yourself around those individuals. And Clint, was there a point in your life where you decided what did that look like when you decided to follow Jesus?
You know, I grew up in the church, but, you know, like a lot of people, you know, as a young adult, and I got off the path. We talked about the Great Banquet a lot. That was very profound for me. The love of the Great Banquet, you know, and that's really whenever, you know, I came back to the, to the Lord. But yeah, I lived in a very sheltered environment, you know, with 2-parent household, you know, that loved me, you know, unconditionally, were always there. My parents started dating when they were 14 years old. I never saw them argue, you know, so I thought that was normal. You know, I learned in my adult life that it wasn't, but, you know, grew up in the church, you know, went to, you know, as I went to high school, then, you know, life really started changing. You know, it became about women and booze, you know, a lot. And I exploited that, you know, tremendously. I carried that into college at Indiana University. You know, I had a big social circle because I played in all the athletic team bands whenever I was down there. And, it was women and rock and roll and partying. You know, carried that, you know, into my post, you know, college life, continued to party, but then started, you know, serving the master of money. You know, I started my own business and, you know, went all in. Back then, you know, I'm going back, you know, 22 years ago, probably. You know, I was working 100-hour work weeks, and people think that that's not possible. I can promise you it is. I did it for quite a long time too. You know, and then quickly, you know, I'd gotten married during that time. Didn't really show her any attention. We had no sign of God whatsoever, and you know, we ended up in divorce. And then post divorce, you know, this is 2010. You know, I started living that 2.5 Men Charlie Sheen, you know, lifestyle. Had a really cool house downtown Indianapolis. You know, through parties, people coming and going a lot. And it was just so empty. Like, you know, it was really, really bizarre. I mentioned it earlier, like I, you know, found myself like just staring at myself for, you know, 5-10 minutes at a time and not having any idea who I was looking at. And I know now that was God trying to speak to me. Like, this is not who you're supposed to be, you know. But then, you know, got together with met my wife, knew she was different pretty quick. You know, I had to change. And, you know, we got into church, and, shortly after that, you know, got to the Great Banquet. And then that's when it really, you know, really changed for me. Really came to the Lord, started getting involved at church. Her and I got married. And then, you know, we had all kinds of, you know, struggles, you know, and that happens sometimes when you find your faith. You know, you're still going to go through trials. And, she had postpartum depression through our birth of our first child. My mom had gotten sick, very sick with cancer. We got back from our honeymoon. My parents moved in with us, actually. It's a very crazy story, and I don't want to get into, you know, all the details because it's, you know, it's very, very long. But anyhow, you know, we ended up, with a 1-year-old girl and me filing for divorce and moving out. And, this is after both of us knew the Lord. But then, I had a strong support system. It's crazy how tied in we are. Your father-in-law was one of those people.
Yeah.
Chuck Reed was one of those people. My buddy Denny Nighty. But most the biggest influence was actually Mindy Campbell, who was your last guest. Was her brother, who him and I had done a lot of work together. We'd done a lot of ministry together, but he just was flat out saying, look, I know you, I know your wife, you guys aren't getting divorced. And, really poured into us and really pulled us out of the gutter. I don't think we'd be together. And I don't think I would have my 6-year-old really if it wasn't for Rick.
Wow.
So, what it looks like now, I'm really serious about my kids knowing the Lord. My dad, his biggest goal, my dad knew the Lord also. I don't want to discount that, but his biggest goal was to get me and my brother to college and to pay for college. And, that's not it for me. I don't care if my kids go to college or not, to be honest with you. I want my kids to know the Lord.
Right.
For our house, we will serve the Lord.
Yeah.
And, so I'm active in our church. I actually play drums in the worship team at our church. We got a Bible study at my office. Get to be in ministry with amazing guys like you. And, really more than anything, it's about wearing, your heart on your sleeve. We talked about that with friends that you have in previous lives. I have this guys trip we take every year to watch the first 2 rounds of the NCAA basketball tournament. We're big, basketball fans. And one of my buddies, and I've known this guy my whole life, but he says GD a lot. And I've never really said that word, even whenever I was doing stuff that I wasn't supposed to do. That was a word that I was raised that you didn't say.
Mm-hmm.
And I especially don't say it now, nor do I want to hear it. And I had to call him out in front of my other friends and said, hey, man, when you're around me, I don't want you using that word. And, he loved me enough to honor that. But, I don't want to turn back. And it's easy to get off track. It's easy to get your priorities, messed up. So being here, with you guys, being in ministries like the Great Banquet, just Bible studies, just getting on my knees whenever I've got periods of anxiousness or fear or, any kind of pain and praying to God. It's really important.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, that's the condensed version of my story.
You're fine.
I could have rattled on for a really long time.
You're good. We're still going to sit here and talk to you.
But yeah, I've got 6 and 9-year-old daughters.
Yeah.
And thankfully both of them love the Lord. And so does my wife. And I'm not saying things are always easy. It's not.
You're fine.
But yeah, we're taking it one day at a time, and we love Jesus.
Yeah. We talked to us earlier about how I know you, and I was blessed enough in my lowest point to come in and understand, hear your story from Tish's perspective, and see how the Lord worked on her while He's working on you, and to bring you back together and to be where you're at today. And I know, you mentioned there's hard moments still, since that moment in your life. You still have hard ones, but I know when I talked to Chuck and he's like, hey, just I don't need to know anything. I never ask. Hey, pray for Clint. Okay, I got you.
Mm-hmm.
So I know there's still the spiritual warfare. There's still things going on. But the condition of your heart remains the same. Like your gratitude, your thankfulness for the Lord, and it hasn't wavered because you see how you walk in church. You see how you carry yourself with your kids and your wife. Like it's steadfast because you're new. You're made different, and you've come to that point in your life where you stopped, you said earlier, serving two masters, where you had this life that you were a provider, you do all these things, not just for your family, but for others too. You said the master, like all those people who work for you, they depend on you to lead that company as well. But you have the relationship with the Lord at the forefront of everything you do. And it shows in, the character who you are, because it spreads out in the community of the Great Banquet. You talk about it at work, you impacted Bryce. And, we've seen it firsthand as well by being in different moments with you, whether it be, again, at your facility at work, in community. So you've been an example of somebody who didn't allow the world to break them down. You've run after Christ, and you've allowed other people to speak, allow other people to have the Lord to use them for you. So yeah, there's more to your story. There's a lot more. You could have rambled on.
Oh yeah, big time. But
yeah, you shared enough where I know people are going to be encouraged by what you just said, to turn after the Lord, and how you've impacted so many people around you. There's I know you probably heard of Chuck's sister Pat, and I got to finally spend time with her recently. She was in town. She said something that probably you'll resonate with a little bit, being wiser, being older. But she said something to me, and I asked her, you've been, I think she's like 70 something. I think 70, maybe around there. And we were talking, and she said, I love looking back. I love wisdom, because I can see all the roads and all the ways the Lord was working in my life and where I'm at right now. So for you, in the same sense, you've took us on a journey of your life, and I know like all the turns and things that he took you on, that if you just did this here, Clint, I had a straight path for you. But you went this way and over here, and I got your path straight. And now you're seemingly on that straighter path, that you have moments, but the walking the faith in the Lord is what's kept you straighter now.
I think my biggest struggle, and if I was to encourage anybody, especially men, is my pride gets in the way a lot. And I think some of the biggest improvements to my my marriage and my life is checking, putting others first. I grew up in a small farm town in southern Indiana. Didn't really cover that much. And it was a parking lot mentality, and by that I mean, when you had a problem with somebody, you made your way out into the parking lot. And, so I grew up busting people in the mouth if I had to, literally. And I was also, my dad was a work ethic guy. It was, there was no sleeping past 7:00 in my house. So I never had people want to spend the night at the Wetherill household because they couldn't sleep. And, you had to get up and work. And, my dad was like, no, there's no excuses. If you want something, go get it. It's there. Whether that's, good grades or girls or, for me it was drums or golf or, whatever, don't make excuses, go get it. And I always did. And, when I did that in my early work life as well, you look back on it, I had a period of time where I always got my way. Was it because I was a exceptionally selfish person? I don't think so. I think it's because I worked hard. And, whenever then, like say I got together with my wife, who has, dealt with some other traumas in her life that shaped her into the person that she is, but then you interject this guy that's always got his way. It was a very toxic thing. Or, it could be any, a number of situations. I had a situation, I went to Family Pictures last Monday. This is funny. And I was miserable. I mean, I'm a dude and I'm getting, the photographer and, taking pictures. And we went out to dinner afterwards, and I noticed that they had this Japanese beer that's not, super common on draft. I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to get one. And this guy asked me for my ID. And I said, well, I don't. It's in the car. Like, I didn't bring it in with me. And he's like, well, I can't give you a beer. And I said, son, I am 26 years removed from being 21. You can serve me a beer and not have to worry about it. And he said, no, I can't. And I said some things I shouldn't have said. And on my walk back from getting my ID in the car, I'm like, I just said these things in front of my wife and kids, who I'm the leader of this household, and what kind of leader, am I?
Mm-hmm.
I brought the guy over and I apologized to him in front of my family. And that's an instance where the parking lot mentality, comes out. Another instance, within our marriage, it's how dare you, do this or that. And, it's over. Just think of the things I just said, like over the dumbest things. You get all bent out of shape, get your blood pressure up, ruin some other, some kid's day who's 23, 24 years old, serving me, at a Texas Roadhouse, like it's, you've got to check your pride. And for me, pride, just got in the way. And I can sit here and say a lot of these things that I say, I feel like that there's, people that are wrong, but who are you to have to prove somebody's wrong when it's something so stupid, So for me, checking my pride at the door and coming in second, it's amazing how much I win when I come in second. And as men, I think that's very hard sometimes.
Yeah, it's very hard to be willing to lose a disagreement or argument and just be like, keep your tongue and like, okay, no problem. Right. Or like, I'm 50 something years old. Why are you asking me for an ID?
I know. Right.
So it's like, but sometimes you have to, that's a tough one, because you don't know who's looking at you and who's watching you too. Kind of like what we talked about tonight.
For sure.
Yeah. When you just said there about that story, it made me think about that verse where he talks about having, staying steadfast in prayer with the gratitude piece. Like when you have gratitude, I think naturally you're humble and you live in humility. In that moment, like Clint 20 years ago would have thought anything other than that, walked her out and probably joked about that with his friends later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But that impacted probably, Tish and your kids so much more than it impacted you and that guy even, but maybe impacted him too. Maybe he's never heard that. And like, why would he, ask for forgiveness? Why would he say sorry?
Right.
Like there was a lot of fruit there that was enjoyed, and it wasn't for you. It was for everyone else around you. So that was a good story, man. Thank you for sharing.
I told him, I said, man, I've been a real jerk and I'm sorry. You didn't deserve that. And I'm very sorry. And, I don't know. It's easy to get off track. Well, we have to stay in the Word. That's why we have to get on our knees. That's why we have to sometimes come in second.
Yeah. Or like what we say is just keep your eyes on Jesus.
Keep your eyes on Jesus.
KYEOJ.
That's right, man.
Is that right, Tim?
Oh, that's so right.
KYEOJ. Because that's basically that in a nutshell. If your eyes on him, sometimes you want to act like a fool.
We all need Jesus.
Yes,
and
we all do.
If you don't think you do, those that don't think they do are the ones that are most lost.
Yeah.
So, Clint, we appreciate you coming on and sharing your story and sharing circumstances in life and also discussing scripture with you. Tim, it's another one down.
Keep them rolling, baby.
Keep them rolling. So we hope you like it, share it, subscribe, and leave comments is fine. We do have an email, pursuingtheheart@gmail.com. We have one now, Clint, so people can send us an email if they want and communicate, whatever. But we appreciate you listening to another week. And next week it'll be just as good. And we'll have different guests coming on. And we'll just keep it rolling. So thank you, and hope you come back again. Like and enjoy.